Right, welcome everybody. So as you can see, I'm here with Holly Branson, who's the Chief Purpose and Vision Officer at Virgin. That's a hell of a title for a job. Welcome, Holly. And also Chris Turner, who is Chief Exec at B Labs, which is basically leading the BCorp movement in the UK, and also driving this amazing Better Business Act campaign, which we're going to hear about shortly. So welcome to both of you. And Holly, I know you're short of time, so I want to dive straight in and ask you about the Better Business Act. This is something you've recently signed, and I'm curious to hear about why you've done that and why it matters to you.
So hi everybody. We did. We signed the Better Business Act about a month ago, and it was something that made me feel so proud that our company did it. At Virgin, our mission is to change business for good. And my main goal as Chief Purpose and Vision Officer is to just make sure that each and every one of our companies are putting people and purpose at the heart of everything that we do. And when I read about the Better Business Act, I just knew that we had to get involved, because that's exactly what their mission is as well. And they want all the UK companies to have a legal obligation to not just make money for their shareholders, which is what the law requires at the moment, but to consider every single stakeholder in all the decisions that are being made. And I personally just think that small but really crucial change in the law will make a really big difference in the UK, and it will just ensure that all businesses in the UK do the right thing for their people, the communities that they're serving, our wonderful planet, and most importantly, they won't be able to pursue profit at the expense of all of those. And so I love this campaign. I think it's brilliant. I love the fact that it combines collaboration with legislative change, and also they give really practical action about what we can do. And so I'm super happy to be here tonight with you guys, and I'm really excited to ask Chris a few more questions.
Go for it.
Great. So nice to see you again, Chris. So how did the Better Business Act come about?
Hi, Holly. Yeah, lovely to see you again as well. And looking at you and Ben have such better lighting than I do. I'm feeling like I'm sitting in the gloom. Obviously, the clock change has thrown me off here, and it's dark. It's pitch black. But so the Better Business Act, exactly as you say, we're on a mission actually to change the way that every single business in the country operates, or rather the sort of governing principles that every single business in the country sort of is aligned to. So it's a big goal with big ambitions here, but ultimately we're doing that because I guess there's a sort of a really exciting positive way of looking at this and a sort of gloomy way of looking at this. And seeing as I'm sitting in the dark, I'll start with the gloomy one, which is that we face these huge challenges, enormous challenges. I've just got back from COP in Glasgow. Clearly, the climate emergency is top of everyone's mind right now, and it's absolutely huge challenge and a systemic challenge. And that's paired up with, we know there's a bit of a social emergency, a crisis of inequality as well, and that actually in many cases business is contributing to that inequality and making it worse. So huge crises that really bring us all, or rather we all share. But on the positive side, we also know that business is such an incredibly, everyone on this call, right, is a business person, is in their own way experimenting with and building businesses which are solving problems, and they can be all kinds of problems. They make in many cases they're business problems. But imagine if actually that problem solving potential was harnessed towards solving those big challenges, and that ultimately every business became a force for good. And that really is the kind of the mission at the heart of the Better Business Act. So with this sort of recognition that actually in tackling these huge, complex, systemic issues, what we actually need is systems change when it comes to a consistent basis on which businesses are operating and benefiting all of us. The Better Business Act is designed to be that kind of systems level intervention, so that we make this little change that you described to the Companies Act, which says that every business needs to align the interests of shareholders with wider society and the environment. And you make that little change, that essentially articulates in a way that's never been done before the contract that we all share with business and that business shares with government. And if you make that change, what you do is you ensure that every business is on a level playing field, really. So businesses which choose to prioritize, or rather advance the interests of all these stakeholders aren't at a disadvantage compared to businesses which are ruthless in pursuing short-term profit, for example. You create that level playing field, and you also, as well as capitalizing all that fantastic innovation towards solving problems, you also take away a hiding place. For businesses that want to do things which damage the environment, for example, they can't hide behind the law anymore, and they can't say, well, the law says we have to prioritize shareholders, so it's what we had to do. And you remove that as an option. So all around, really, we're just, we want to make a really strong signal for the amazing power that business has. And we want to ensure that every single business is at its best and contributing towards these solutions.
And what's amazing to see is that so many more businesses are inherently just placing purpose at the heart of everything they do. Then they're not waiting for that legal change to happen. And I know that there's probably so many founders on this call today who are thinking about purpose, embedding it into their mission statements, business plans, and sort of really thinking about purpose at the very start of the journey. And I know that is so much easier when it's been done from the very beginning than when you're trying to change a big corporation that never thought about it before. What do you think are the biggest ways in which business can benefit by looking at purpose instead of just profit? And how will signing up to the Better Business Act achieve this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's great to see more and more businesses, showing, leading the way on this. And clearly that's being driven by just the way the world is, going. One of the things that we're saying quite a lot, actually, when we're campaigning on the Better Business Act is that actually for most businesses, you look at sort of, startups and, vast majority of SMEs, actually, this is a case of the law catching up with where business culture is already going. Really, we're kind of leaving the law behind. And so the law needs to catch up and needs to reflect what business people and particularly founders recognize as what needs to be done now. So this is shifting. I think one of the really exciting things about the Better Business Act is that it is building on a really strong kind of base of evidence that this is an incredibly powerful way of building a business. Is to advance both profit and purpose, if you like, or rather, or to consider all stakeholders. So we've designed the legislation, we've designed the amendment inspired by optional versions of this legislation, which exist in lots of different countries around the world, not in the UK, but lots of states of the US, Italy, Colombia, all over the place. And there are around the world over 10,000 businesses which have chosen this kind of corporate form. And so you first of all, you can take from that, right, the fact that all these businesses are choosing to change their legal articles, or sorry, actually in the UK they change their articles, so we've got that evidence base as well. So all around the world you've got businesses choosing to change their form of incorporation, adopt different legal frameworks, change their articles, find different ways of kind of embedding these principles. And so, I mean, the truth of the matter is we're beyond the point now where it should be optional, right? It should be the default for every business, which is what the Better Business Act is about. But the fact that so many businesses are choosing to do it and have been choosing to do it is an incredible validation of this being an amazing way of kind of showing leadership as a business. Going beyond that, though, we've done research. So I say my other job is growing the B Corp movement here in the UK, and we've got over 500 B Corps in the UK now. We did a big piece of research comparing B Corp SMEs to the wider kind of population of SMEs in the country, and we demonstrated that across every single one of the 10 indicators we measured, whether it's attracting and retaining great talent, whether it's attracting investment, whether it's investing in research and innovation, every single one of them, B Corps, so businesses which had embedded this type of operating, outperformed other businesses. So it's just a great way of running a business. It's more resilient. You plan for the long term. You're aligned with the people who want to work for you. You're aligned with your customers. It's a no-brainer.
And what's great with that piece of research is a lot of people think it's an either-or solution. Like you either go for profit or you go for purpose, and you've got to decrease your profit because of one or the other. And that's lovely to hear. And we all know that research is getting out to people, but it's making sure that we all use our networks to push that far and wide. I think that is wonderful. And do you think like the last 2 years they've been really tough for lots of people, especially many businesses? What would you say that there is an inherent reason that we need to embed purpose and have this change in law to make sure people don't have a sort of a wrong incentive to do the wrong thing in really difficult times?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? Thinking about the last sort of couple of years and the sort of the way that it's shaping the way that people are building businesses. I think the first thing is that the pandemic certainly was something of a it in many ways, I suppose, it provided a bit of a lens through which people could have actually had a really tangible way of looking at how businesses responded to the pandemic and seeing those which had a very clear sort of alignment with community and society and responded in a way that kind of reflected that. So I think what it has done really is, if anything, heighten those expectations that I was talking about earlier, and sort of, I suppose, deepen the need for businesses to be very kind of credible and authentic and kind of committing to a wider set of stakeholders. Because when crisis hits, if it's just sort of, if it's just kind of PR or if it's just talk, then it's very quickly going to become apparent. So I think it's certainly sort of, I think the last few years, tough times, I think they've sort of made the need for business, certainly deepened the crises that we all face and made the need for business to be at its best and solving these crises. But it's also, I think, made us more smarter and more demanding when it comes to businesses really walking the talk on this stuff. And again, that's where the Better Business Act can play a really important role in making sure that legally businesses have to walk the talk on it.
Great. Well, thanks so much for chatting to me, Chris. It's always lovely talking, and I love what you do. How many companies have you got signed up now?
That is a good question. You're doing my job for me here, Holly. I should have said that earlier on, shouldn't I? We've got over 800 signed up now. So yeah, we're aiming. Great. I don't know. I was going to say we're aiming for 1,000, but my team will tell me off if I say we want to do that by a certain time. So I'm not going to set a date.
I'll set a date and then they have to make it happen. Yeah, I think you were on about 500 when we first started talking. So that's amazing. In just a few months, you've increased by so many. So thank you so much for chatting to me. And then before I leave, I've got one question for you, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I hear that you've started a business, which is really exciting, called Raise, very first funding platform for climate startups. Like, congratulations. I don't know how you find the time, but that is absolutely brilliant. And I want to hear more. What impact are you hoping for it to have? What's it going to do? And how do you think it's going to build better business?
Thanks, Holly. Well, I was with Chris last week in Glasgow, and it's painfully obvious that we can't negotiate with the science and the crisis that we're in. And as much as we're all pushing in our activist ways through business and out in the streets and online to try and get this good political deals happening, it's probably not going to be what the world needs and those who are suffering. And so this is why the Better Business Act and all these other impact orgs become even more important. And so building on that, and this is something I've been working in for a long time, I'm launching with a brilliant Australian team of founders this new climate startup funding platform. So if you are thinking of building a business that's trying to solve a problem related to the climate or nature crisis, so we're talking to seaweed farms, to carbon capture technology, to refill products, to education, to regenerative packaging, this touches every aspect of life. And it's going to be a way where investors can move their money from maybe an area where they're not having quite such a positive impact on climate, and they can put it into small businesses where the opportunities, as we're just discussing, are absolutely huge. And so that's what we're doing at Raise. We've got our legals in place. We've got this fantastic new structure which de-risks the investment. It gives the founders more control. It gives investors more flexibility and a better chance of a return. So we're really excited about it. It's now live in Australia and the UK. So if you're a startup founder who's looking to build in this space, and so many of us should be considering that now, then jump on Raise. It's Raise with 2 A's, as if you're down under. So it's raise.co. And we'd love to help you raise money or invest in some of the most exciting businesses of tomorrow. So
raise.co.uk or just
.co. Raise.co with 2 O's.
.co. Okay. Great. Oh, that's so exciting. Well done. Lovely to have done something so productive after these last horrible 2 years. So really well done to both of you. And it's been lovely to talk to you, and have a really good rest of your event, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Holly. So I'm now going to bring onto stage Dharma and Victoria, who are experts in this world. Hi, Dharma. Welcome. That's it. Victoria's here as well. Seamless. Seamless. So welcome to the stage. I thought we'd kick off our conversation. Chris, we've already had an intro from you, but we're coming back with lots more questions. But a quick introduction of how you fit into this space that we're talking about. You know, the Better Business Act is a very new campaign, but you have both, and Chris as well, been working in this arena of helping build businesses that are trying to solve serious problems in the world for a long time. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how your own journey, how you got into it, and also a shout out to an impact startup that you are really excited about at the moment. So Dharma, coming to you first, we're going take us back a little bit.
Great. Yeah. I don't know how far ago I should take you back into, because we're actually, so I work at Bethnal Green Ventures, which is an early stage tech for good VC, a lot of convoluted words, but essentially it means that we back founders at the very early stages. So ideation, pre-product, pre-revenue, who are using technology to tackle the world's pressing social and environmental challenges at scale. And we're actually one of the first members of the UK BCorp community. So we certified to becoming a BCorp back in 2015, and joined the Better Business Act as soon as it came out. We're one of the first signatories to it as well. And it's amazing to sort of see the progress over the last couple of months, even just in terms of how many more businesses from literally all walks of life and industries are signing up to it as well, which really signals to us that more people are actually aware that you can do both profit and impact, and you don't have to do it at the expense of the planet, which is really amazing. I should also say, by way of introduction, my name is Dharma. It's actually Damian Satyanathan, but Dharma is absolutely fine because it's not the entire alphabet. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really pleased to be here. And if I have to choose one particular startup, a very impactful startup as well, and apologies for this, but it's one of the startups that we've invested in back in 2012. But just seeing the sort of the evolution and the impact they've had on people and the planet as well has been absolutely fantastic. So the company in question is Fairphone, which is also a B Corp based out of Amsterdam. And they have built a ethical modular smartphone, so really trying to clean up the entire supply chain from where we source the raw materials that go into phones, to actually making sure that the phones are built in factories where people don't commit suicide or are allowed to unionize and campaign for decent working conditions, but also tackle the end spectrum as well of the whole life cycle of a product to actually ensure that less electronic waste is going to landfill. And if you want to check them out, I highly recommend reading their impact report, which you have to do as a B Corp as well, on an annual basis. But they have brought challenges to the industry as well, which is amazing to see, but also become a profitable business, and have made the mark that actually shows you can do both impact, blend profit and purpose, and make a meaningful contribution to society.
It's a brilliant example, Dharma, and I followed Fairphone. Unfortunately, I didn't invest in them, unlike you guys, but I followed them for a while. And it's probably one of the hardest things to industries to disrupt, right? And yet here they are a decade in, and they really are like, this is a brand that's going to change the world of communications, certainly hardware. By the way, if anyone's looking at Fairphones, look at Honest Mobile, which is a new startup in the UK, which is providing a fairer way to invest your phone bills basically into social and environmental projects, and they pair with Fairphones. So good start. Thanks, Dharma. Victoria,
and
welcome.
Also B Corp.
Yes, and also B Corp. He's going to keep interrupting and say that all night. And also B Corp. Victoria, welcome to the Virgin Startup stage. You are so many things to so many people, but tell us a little bit about how your journey has brought you here into the world of impact and business.
For sure. So lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. I've worn many different hats over the years, from advertising world to startup life to big tech and round again. So I've done a lot of different things. Recently left a company now known as Meta. And
which we're not in tonight, are we? We're not in the verse of Meta. Not yet.
And I guess there's been a red thread around I am a systems thinker and I'm a systems builder, and there is something about how can we look at questions differently from bringing it everyone else who cares about similar topics or impact questions. So the whole community question for me comes from that angle. It's around what happens if we collaborate better with people who are in similar fields. So my work has always been around ecosystems and tying them closer together. And there's still so much to do in this space. So yeah, I'm really interested in support systems at scale and mental health questions. I feel like we need to create space for that to improve in everyone's company, so that we have more space to think about the big questions. I think as a society, we're still rushing through a lot of very big decisions that have very big impacts. So I'm just excited to keep connecting dots.
And on the dot connections, and also that super important point of how do we think long term whilst we're facing urgent, the crises that we've been talking about. You've just released a new podcast in this space. Is that right?
Yeah. So we just did a collaboration with Headspace and the Long Time Project. It's all about thinking about what does long time mean, how to be better ancestors, and getting people to actually embody that and think about it as they take action. So we've released a series of tools that people can use with their friends, communities, companies, and we're really trying to push the conversation because we're all in it, whether we want to think about it or not. We're all going to be affected by this and the generations ahead. So yeah, that's been a super lovely project to work on. We've just released episode 1. It's called the Long Time Academy. And,
amazing. Drop that link in the chat when you get a chance, Victoria, and you never regret exploring those questions. Trust me, especially when it's with people like yourself. And do you have a shout out to an impact startup other than the podcast that you're building that you'd like to mention?
I mean, it's probably in that space again. I love Sanctus. I've been obsessed with them since day one, and just lovely way of building in public and really listening to the community and what people need. So that would be my shout out. Just great to see them grow throughout the years.
Well, and for those that have never come across Sanctus, what are they? What do they do?
They're a mental health community that help organizations and individuals to create time for mental health.
Yeah, and I remember them starting, and they funded their first version of their mental health workshops, which they offer for free, and they were building community by selling basically merchandise with the brand on it. And I was like, you wouldn't think a mental health company would kick off that way, but they did, and they've done so much great stuff since. Chris, tell us a little bit more about B Corp for people that don't know, like what is a B Corp, and how does it fit in with what we're talking about tonight?
Thanks, Ben. And I just want to say hi to Dharma. We used to work in the same office. It's lovely to see you. It's been too long. And Victoria, lovely to be here with you as well. So I'm sure lots of people watching know about B Corp, so I'll be very brief. But the B Corp community, or rather the B Corp movement, is now over 4,000 businesses strong around the world. So certified B Corps are businesses which essentially do two things. They, on the one hand, they do a very rigorous assessment. It's a sort of self-assessment which looks into or asks questions about really most areas of their business, ranging from their governance, their workers, customers, community, and environment. And they will do this self-assessment and they will accumulate points as they do that. When they reach 80 points, they're eligible to submit that assessment. And we then do an independent verification of their assessment. If that's successful and they have a verified score of over 80 points, they then need to do the second thing, which is that they need to amend their articles of association. And this is what we call the mission lock. So essentially, it's a sort of legal, binding commitment to people, planet, and profit. So that you can call it what you like, triple bottom line, stakeholder governance, but it essentially locks that in the UK, it's the governing articles of the business. In other countries, it might be a separate legal form. It sort of depends where you are and which jurisdiction. So those two things coming together make a certified B Corp. And as I say, over 4,000 around the world. Bethnal Green Ventures is one of over 500 in the UK. So growing really fast. The UK community is growing faster than any other in the world right now, which is fantastic. And our mission, similar to the BBA, but obviously, the BBA is a policy campaign. We're trying to change the law for all businesses. Our mission with the B Corp movement is, again, to prove that business can be a force for good, but really to do so by finding those businesses who are going to be the leaders, within that movement, within that shift to a better economy, a better way of doing business. And so businesses like Bethnal Green Ventures and the other B Corps in our community are leading the way. They're inspiring others. Their people are role models, So that our work essentially is really just, championing what B Corps do so that we inspire more businesses to do likewise.
And the amazing thing about the B Corp community now is it's everything from, Bethnal Green Ventures and Brugger through to Body Shop, and there's the full range of businesses that you have in the world. And we'll talk about maybe in a little bit about how, as startups and early stage businesses, we can make, build partnerships with bigger businesses that are already part of those kind of communities. Do you have one you want to give a shout out now to, Chris?
So many. It's like your favorite child, isn't it? Do you know what? The one I'm going to mention is sort of as soon as we were allowed to all get together again, after sort of COVID stuff, we did a team day with a business based in Clapham called Growing Underground, which do sort of vertical farms. And they've got one in the sort of abandoned train tunnels / bomb shelters from the Second World War under Clapham Common, and just the most amazing business, innovative, solving a challenge which is really top of mind right now, even though food wasn't on the agenda at COP, despite being one of the sort of biggest challenges we need to solve. Great crew, looked after as well and sent us away with boxes of cress. So what more can you ask for?
What more can you ask for? And I'm going to throw one more in the mix who I spent time with in Glasgow. They're called Aim High, and they are a sort of climate and nature education startup. They've kind of exploded out the blocks in the last year, and they're a brilliant team of sort of activists turned entrepreneurs. And last week from Glasgow, they ran a live class to over 5,000 schools, and they're working with businesses. And they've just got this great way of introducing the science and the emotions, basically the head and the heart of exploring the climate crisis in workshops and bringing people together. So they are one to watch. They're called Aim High. And on the emotions of all of it, I wanted to just take a moment with the three of you. This is the sort of thing that Victoria would definitely do if she was in my shoes tonight. Take a moment and just ask about how you're feeling. And this is a question to everyone who's watching as well. How are you feeling in this moment? We've got the noise of Glasgow and COP26, which here in the UK we're feeling very strongly, and I'm sure many of you are around the world. We've got the unprecedented social crises, which we touched on earlier with Holly. We're all trying to get our ideas out into the world, and even if we're far down the line and leading campaigns or great, impact finance communities like Bethnal Green, it's still tough. So how are you feeling, honestly, and how are you navigating through this particular moment? Damo, I'll come to you with that difficult sort of direct question first.
Okay, so physically, I have to say I'm feeling a bit frazzled as well, because I've got the perpetual cold that's not COVID, apparently. Also apologies if I come across really frazzled. That's because of that. But mentally, I think sort of during the summer as well, and I did a masterclass for Diversity VC on the world of impact investing, and generally about how we can be more purposeful about using capital to drive positive outcomes in the world as well. And when I wrote a longer piece about this as well, just to share more knowledge in the community and provide people with more tools and resources to start building impactful businesses as well. But at that particular point, I was really jaded by the state of the world, also not just as a result of COVID and the global health and economic crisis that came of it, but literally the world is burning. People are pushed into massive extreme poverty, and we see time and time again that sort of the instigators and the people who are continuously profiting from damage to the world are just continuing on without any repercussions. So at that point, I was quite mad, and but what really helped overcome this as well is just being able to connect. So opportunities like this and bringing communities together is just super meaningful in a time when most people are also isolating at home, or just stuck at home, or working from home, or so really grateful of the chances for more serendipity and for more connections, and that's been super helpful.
I'm sorry to hear you're still struggling with the cold, but you're glowing from where I'm sitting, Dharma. Yeah. Victoria, how are you? Where are you at in this moment?
I guess there's a sense of urgency that has been there for a while, but now it feels like an imminent urgency, and I feel excited by what is at our doorstep, but also terrified because we don't have that much time. So I feel it's a weird feeling. I just think if anyone is wondering, like, oh, what am I like? Am I making a difference? Am I moving the needle? The answer is yes. Like, everybody can be moving the needle and choosing what they move the needle for. So the whole thing of the Great Resignation really resonated with me. And I was like, oh, I'm actually part of this without even, it's not like you plan this. But there's something about, we can ask for more, and we can ask for better businesses and, better ways to bring people together and take decisions and do business. So I think we're heading in a great direction, and I'm excited for it.
And when you feel that fear and anxiety, Victoria, I mean, you bring people together, you always have done, and created magic between people. Is that your sort of default action? You just like, how can I gather some people, or who can I join? Is that how you pull yourself out of that angst?
Yes. And there's been a lot of development in kind of going inwards and kind of, learning to kind of meditate and do things on your own. So it's kind of twofold, I guess. One is meditating, and the other one is like making space by meditating, and then understanding how to use your energy wisely by, bringing people together. And the whole thing with communities as ecosystems is that the reach is enormous. So if you get the right people in, then you are in the right pockets, and you can do the right influence. So I'm really, community is always the answer.
And Chris, what about yourself?
I am. I'm not sure I should have gone last. I don't know if this is a great note to leave it on. I'm exhausted. I similar to Dharma, I've had the cold, and I'm still I'm sort of on the way out of that. But also back from COP, which I think is I think it's draining because it's hectic, because there's lots going on, but I think it's also draining because it's a lot of talking. And I think I was, I think probably what I should be able to say is that I was I was maybe drained by the talking and energized by the action, the action on the streets and, the people who are out there sort of driving home the message of urgency. I'm not sure they were quite in balance. I'm not sure that the action was enough to boost me after the talking. And so I think, I think I've come away tired. But I do think that, that the sort of, back in my kind of natural habitat, I suppose, talking to people and businesses trying to do good and coming up with new ways of doing that is going to restore those energy levels, because it normally does. And I'm back out tomorrow, doing sort of events in person again, which is exciting, and with businesses and people who are taking action and doing things and creating things. So ultimately, that's what's going to fix this. And it's it's adding as much of that as possible out, which is going to change the system, with things like the BBA as well. So it's a tired evening, but let's hope it's the night before I start recharging.
Well, I'm going to do our best to recharge you now, Chris. So let's get to the action. With lots of people here sharing all these brilliant projects and businesses. But if the three of you tonight we were going, right, we've got the kindling of an idea for a startup. We want to make sure it has a really positive impact and is profitable. Where do you start? And I know there's lots of variables there. But Dharma, jump in. How do you design an impact model? Surely that's going to take a long time. What business model or finance model is best for us? What's the best way to start?
I mean, the best way to start is just testing it with people and just validating your ideas, validating the willingness to pay for a product or service. So you don't yet have to come up with your impact model or your impact alignment, because that will come naturally if it's embedded into your business model and into your product and service. That's at least also something that we tell early stage founders when they come through our doors as well, is that we will help you build your impact measurement and impact management processes into place as well, but not to get distracted by the commitment of actually trying to figure out how to do that from scratch, because that's also with anything in startup land, it will come as you grow and as you scale. But there are some really meaningful methodologies that people can look up, which is sort of trying to figure out where your alignment is with the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, especially if you're tackling or accelerating progress towards any of those. And we definitely need to do that, because no country is on track and actually achieving them by 2030. So there's a definite need to plug the SDGs. There's different sort of ways of actually building out your theory of change, and Nesta has a DIY toolkit available where all of the resources are freely available for you to start out of actually what is the theory of change that you want to embed into your business. And where people can go for funding, if you're based in the UK as well, oftentimes founders will hear that you might be too early or you're not at the right stage, especially if you're going down the VC route as well, looking for venture capitalist money. At the moment, applications are open for the Ideas and Pioneers Fund with the Paul Hamlin Foundation, which is £15,000 to literally just test your ideas if you're trying to drive positive outcomes in the world. And applications for those close in 5 days. So it's definitely worthwhile just applying to getting some funding to really just go out and be able to test and prototype your ideas as well. And then when you get to a stage, you can apply to B2B. We're going to be opening our applications for the next cohort on the 24th of November. So backing early stage founders through our 12-week program, but also providing follow-on investment opportunities. And there's loads and loads of resources out there, but the easiest thing is to just start one step at a time.
Yeah, great advice. And what I love about those tips around applying for various funds or incubators or accelerators is by even if you're not sure of your model, where it's going, the questions you get asked will prompt you to think of them. I remember doing it as an exercise in a workshop, getting everyone to fill out a Kickstarter campaign page, even though they weren't planning a crowdfund, because they'd be like, "Oh, what's your fail-safe plan if you can't get the supply chain set up in time?" So yeah, if you've got sort of a little idea, just start applying for stuff. Those recommendations from Dharma started. Victoria, what would you add in terms of like how the art of the start?
I would add, Dharma, adding to your talking to a lot of people, I would add talking to a lot of people in that sector. I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from other people's mistakes that we don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. So I would go to as many, events, meetups, one-on-ones, asking people for advice, for just where they're at and where they see momentum. I think it's really important in the beginning, because a lot of times these things happen while following a certain momentum. So that's how you can also secure some of your first partnerships or, hires. So really being out there and using all the wisdom that is already around you. Just start where you are.
Yeah, it's great advice. And the way I try and do that, and it's not hard to do it. It is hard to do it, but I keep on top of it. Is every day have a call book with someone, without like, even if there's no sort of like clear identity sort of agenda. So I'm like, here's someone who's kind of curious about what we're doing. Start a conversation. When you're working at home alone, it's the thing that really helps me keep energized and build connections. Chris, in the B Corp community, there are so many different impact models, but I wonder if you could give us an example or share a little bit around trends or where you see people succeeding with them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, I won't sort of, I won't go into my life story, but I used to work in doing all sorts of random things. But I've run startups in the past, and I also used to work in international development, and I also used to, when I worked in international development, I worked with lots of social enterprises. So there's this kind of spectrum of sort of businesses that do good, and I think obviously with sort of social enterprises, they're very often businesses which are designed around an impact model, right? Solving a specific problem or a specific challenge. And I think one thing that I would, the reason why I was excited to sort of move from that world to B Corp is that with the B Corp movement, we have a very clear sort of perspective that any business can be a force for good, right? So it's not sort of that impact model, as you said, Ben, it doesn't have to be a sort of, find the one sort of pressure point, one pain point, that you're going to solve, which is going to make X number of people's lives better. And, actually a business which is rooted in place, in community, which is providing great, meaningful work, which is, fulfilling and providing needed services or products, is absolutely, a force for good. And so I just want to sort of say that, because I think it's, it's not as if, you need to invent something new to solve some really kind of knotty challenge. So with that in mind, I think, and one of the great things about the B Corp movement, I suppose, is that actually the tool which underpins it is totally free, right? You can go to the B Impact Assessment, you go to our website and go to the B Impact Assessment, and all of those things I described earlier, that kind of rigorous assessment that looks at every bit of your business, you can just do that. You can just log on now and you could just start, playing around with it. And what that will do ultimately is provide you with literally hundreds of ways of ensuring that your business or the business you're imagining will have a positive impact, just by being and doing in the right way. Of course, you then layer on top of that anything you want, and I think that's the joy of business in many ways, is that it's a creative exercise, isn't it? And all the things you guys have been saying, Dharma and Victoria, about sort of meeting and connecting, and that's all about sort of the creative elements of building a business and growing, and that's exciting. But I think when I say it this way, it sounds quite boring, but those solid foundations of kind of like, are the basics there and are they good? That's kind of, I think, really, really important. And I would also say that from my days of running startups, I wish I'd had it, right? I wish I'd had something like, the B impact assessment, which just says, you're starting a business. Why not think about all of these things? Because they're the building blocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And if the three of you were starting a business tomorrow, what area would you be exploring, or what are you seeing in your communities that this is something that's like, oh, I wish more people working on this space, or this is a problem that's going to create loads of fantastic businesses in the future? Feel free to jump in, any of you.
I'm in the mental health for young adults area, following closely what the Zinc Academy are doing in a few weeks. So there is a whole program around people coming together to create businesses, supporting mental health in children and young people. I think that's a huge area I want to see more improvement in.
And does your new project, Institute of Belonging, does that overlap in that world? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, the Institute of Belonging, it's all about looking at community, but in a lot more deeper way, because it's a buzzword now and everybody's trying to do a meaningful community of like-minded people. And we're not asking the real questions of how does that work? Who is it for? I'm really afraid of just that being something that loses its essence because we're losing the understanding of it.
Yes.
So I'm really interested in showing some more of the science of connection and belonging so that people can actually create that around them in a more meaningful way. So yeah, that's something that I'm working on.
That's the Institute of Belonging. You should check it out, curious minds. There's got to be a word for equivalent of greenwashing for community washing. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be a better word than community washing. But I reckon it's a grand practice, and those that do it well rise above them all. Dharma, if you were building something new tomorrow, what would it be?
It would definitely be something around disaster risk reduction.
Disaster risk reduction. Okay.
Yeah, definitely in the space of like climate change mitigation.
Yes.
So I'm Tamil, and my parents are from Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is one of the many islands that are suffering or bearing the brunt of the climate crisis as well. But similarly, I've heard from founders on the African continent, for example, who are trying to build businesses that are deeply rooted in the cultural traditions of the people. So someone trying to use the old sort of pastoral activities to finding fresh water, for example, and actually building a tech layer on top of it. And that's hugely fascinating to me. So if I needed to build something, it would definitely be in the sort of climate change mitigation space as well.
Fantastic. And that indigenous wisdom, which we're finally seeing a light being shone on in some areas, even on the streets of Glasgow this week, is actually a really fascinating place to explore in terms of ideas and solutions to some of these huge problems. So if you can connect with people from different parts of the world, especially the regions of the world that are suffering, then there are opportunities to support and build something exciting. I love that, Dharma. And I wanted to ask a little bit about partnerships. So you have all worked in you're part of big organizations, have huge impact. So we're little startups over here. We're like, right, how do I take something that's got a little bit of traction, has a strong mission, has a business case, but I want to accelerate fast, scale fast. How do I build partnerships with organizations and brands that are trying to explore the same space? And we see this a lot now, but brands are moving for, what was CSR over here, and now, like, as we heard from Holly earlier, purpose, center of their business. The CEOs and the CMOs are now driving it. So what tactics have you seen that have been really effective from a startup building partnerships with bigger organizations? Feel free to jump in.
Really doing your homework in terms of what a company is already doing or not going and where the fit might be. Because sometimes at Facebook, I'll get a lot of pitches for things that you can just tell that there wasn't research that had been done before, which is great, but also do your homework. And I would say getting involved as much as possible, like going to any public event that's happening, anything where you can meet people face-to-face or online, because there's something about if you put a name to the project and you want to support that person, it makes it easier, because often there aren't very clear pathways for bringing in these partnerships. And a lot of the case scenarios is just somebody who will advocate for something they want to see happen. But being out there, I think, just makes it easier to have these initial conversations and seeing where the gaps are, what language are people speaking, how are they talking about this problem that they have. So it just gives you a lot more information that you can then use then, to pitch back.
Show some empathy for the people you're trying to talk to. Yeah, it's an obvious point, but it gets missed, right?
Yeah.
Any other top tips?
There's an element of considering the sort of sphere of influence as well with the companies that you aspire to work for or work with. So really trying to, as Victoria said, trying to find the right people as well, but also the people who will lobby for you. We've had so many startups that actually managed to get really great contracts and pilots done just by virtue of also finding out who the right people are that they needed to speak to and really lobbying them for an intense period to get their back in, get their back up as well to those who ultimately make the decisions. And that's a lot of hard work, but that's also work you have to put in, because we're still in a society where warm introductions are still working and are still the norm. So do your best with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for example. Yeah. If you're trying to work with public institutions, make a few freedom of information requests to find out if they have a budget to work with potential partners and who they might have worked with in the past, and sort of retrofit in how you might fit into their sort of future plans and engagement strategy as well.
I love that. And the great thing about working online sometimes is if you're slightly more introverted or you don't have that confidence to, do the kind of Virgin approach of like jump on stage and shout about it, then you can jump into people's communication spaces, and as long as you're interesting and relevant to them, you'll get their attention at some point. And as you were speaking, Dharma and Victoria, there are literally dozens of comments and people sharing stuff. So if I'm you watching this tonight and I'm trying to build connections, I'm going on all these LinkedIns, all these sites, I'm following them on social, I'm dropping them notes, I'm saying, hey, this is cool, but like in an authentic way. But that's it's acting now, right? So as well as listen to us, do that now. And then sort of in terms of once you've got the attention of, say, the person you want to in the brand or the business that you're really trying to, whether it's an investor or whether it's a big partner or media opportunity, and they hear pitches all the time. You hear pitches all the time. What are the pitches or the quick ways of engaging people that really work? Because we can all polish our elevator pitch, but it can sometimes come across as like, oh, they're literally reading a script. What are the ways that really have got your attention in the past around businesses that are trying to solve a problem that you've then responded to?
That's a really good question. One of the most prominent examples that really stuck to me, and ultimately was also a company that we've invested in as part of our current program, was a female founder, trying to build a carbon emissions, sort of looking into removing the greenhouse gas emissions from built environments, which is absolutely fantastic. Such a cool product. But in the middle of a pitch, she just spun out a product demo as well, which is not something that you usually see in like a short 3-minute or 5-minute pitch. But it was just so great to be able to sort of get an understanding of how the product looks, how it works, and show the sort of possibilities of what it can actually enable many construction sites to do. And that was a really nifty trick, because usually every investor or everyone you pitch to in a sales meeting will know the sort of typical structure of how a pitch should run. But try to find that one element of surprise that you can sneak in. It could also be copy. Give yourself a funky title that will stand out to people as well. Find out sort of one element that really sticks out and leaves an impression.
Fab. Chris and Victoria.
I mean, humility is always a winner for me. And ask, like, if you ask how you can help that business and what problems they're trying to solve, you're a lot more likely to at least get that information and have an interesting conversation about a sector you're in, instead of the very, ballsy, this is why you need us. It works less well.
Yeah, I think, it's so interesting that, isn't it? That line between sort of, confidence and humility, is such a hard one to tread. And I think it's, it's kind of knowing your worth, isn't it? It's having that sort of, that kind of confidence in your worth. And I mean, that's something I was going to say when we were talking about the, corporates and working with corporates, is sort of know your worth there, because I think, another one of my jobs, I'm not like 60, but another one of my jobs, we're working in innovation consultancy, where doing a lot of work with big corporates who were just so hungry to work with startups, because big businesses struggle so much with innovation, right? So how do we bring this in? How do we sort of, how does that osmosis work of kind of bringing the innovation in through the startup sort of integration? But now there's all of that is still true, but now there's also the purpose layer as well. And it's kind of like you've got these small startups which are built on, mission and purpose, and they're led by amazing founders who kind of really through and through believe in that mission. So, you're the double threat there. You're sort of amazing creators and innovators, but also really kind of authentic and driven leaders. And I think it's knowing that worth. That's a really special kind of combination to bring to a big business and to offer to them. So, yeah, I totally agree with Victoria. Like humility, but rooted in kind of just confidence of your worth, what you're doing, and the fact that it's meaningful.
Fantastic. A couple of questions to wrap up this conversation before we go to our breakout rooms. I can see all the conversation going on. I want to get people face to face there. So I would love you to help bust a myth, which is around this idea that when you try and build something that's better for the world, it's purposeful, it's having a positive impact, you sacrifice your profit margins or your potential value as a company. Can you help us bust that myth, and also maybe share an example or two as why that's not the case and definitely won't be the case going forward? Dharma.
I'll link to a report which was done by the Upright Project that looked into sort of ESG funds, impact funds, and comparing them to sort of public equities indices as well. And it really shows, the data really shows that you can do both. You can blend profit and purpose and be a really sustainable, profitable business as well. We have evidence from the likes of Kapoor Capital, from BGB actually, where we see the sort of returns on our investments that we made a decade ago come in. So there's loads and loads of evidence now that actually shows that you can build a really great purpose-driven, profitable business as well.
We love a bit of evidence. Thank you. Victoria.
For me, there is a huge thing about culture and talent. It is a non-negotiable, and it's becoming more and more non-negotiable to be making actual, impact and purpose. And I think while maybe until a few years ago, you couldn't really tell the distinction, or it was still okay to believe in it, I think now we're at a point where there is really a cutting point. And I think in terms of team culture and team dynamics and businesses of the future, this will be something that is tremendously important. So yeah, people first.
100%. People and trees. And you just said tremendously, and Helen's just dropped down in the link here. I'm the founder of Tremendously, wild and outdoor education startup for all ages. So there you go. A good name will stick. Chris, why is purpose the way for the future of business in terms of making a profit, sustainable business and profit in 20 seconds?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got evidence too. I mentioned some research earlier that we've done with our community. So there's really strong evidence here, and the evidence all the way through the chain, right? So that evidence I spoke about earlier on, comparing B Corps to other businesses and showing all of those indicators. You've also got evidence of sort of whether it's employees, people looking for work, and looking for businesses that are values aligned to work with. Victoria, as you're saying, all about people, or whether it's like people in their role as consumers or customers, and what they look for in the brands that they buy from, etc. And then all the way down the chain, investors. The data's out there about the incredible flow of capital towards investments that are aligned with ESG, or however you would like to define it. So there's so all that evidence is there, but I think I would also just sort of ask, one thing that we talk about with the Better Business Act is we talk about the actual change to the law that we're proposing, which is, and the wording is, aligning the interests of shareholders, wider society, and the environment. And that's the change we want to make to the law. When I'm talking about it, though, I also say, actually, again, that's the law just reflecting the world, because in the world, the interests of shareholders, people, wider society, other people, and the environment, the world we all rely on, are aligned. Those interests have to be aligned, because you can't have any of those groups benefiting at the expense of the others. So you're sort of, if you're not pursuing purpose in that sense, then you're out of balance with ultimately, the way that we all need to operate if we're all going to sort of flourish. So there is that core fundamental principle that operating a business in balance with the aligned interests of all of us is just the right thing to do. And a final thing I will say there, a question for anybody thinking about starting a business, is how long do you want your business to succeed for? Because one of the key things here is about short-term versus long-term and resilience. And I think if you want your business to succeed and to flourish over years and years to come, then this is only going to become more important.
Yeah, that's super important, Chris. I'm going to ask you all in a moment to share an invitation, a call to action, or one or two or three for the audience tonight. But I just want to share a story that you prompted me on, which was a couple of years ago. I went to this amazing, it was an AGM, but there were 5,000 people there. And the brand for who the meeting was, it's called Tony's Chocolonely. And they started over a decade ago a chocolate business to try and end child slavery in the cocoa industry. Which for many people didn't even realize that this was a huge problem. And they've been on this mission, and they've got to a point where they're essentially their biggest competitor, the equivalent of Cadbury's in the Netherlands, had committed to the same standards in their supply chain as Tony's had been demonstrating over the last few years. And so this was a huge moment, and this was up on stage, and I was in the audience, and the sort of chocolate CEO was there with their big competitor who was like 50 times their size in terms of business, and they're like celebrating and shaking hands, and like he's like, this is the thing, this is why this is our whole purpose, our whole mission, we're a big step further towards solving this problem in the world. And the compere stood up and said, congratulations, Mr. Chocolate, but surely we have a problem here, that now your biggest competitor has now the unique selling points that you have as Tony's Chocolonely, then you're finished because they're much bigger than you. And he turned around and he said to the host, he said, maybe this is the beginning of the end of Tony's Chocolonely. But if it is, it means that we have made a massive dent in solving this problem in the world. And completely genuine. And in that moment, you knew with all the journalists present that they were going to sell thousands and thousands more bars of chocolate. So for me, it was just such a great thing to witness, as like, we're focused on a mission, focused on a solid business model, focused on a mission, partner with our biggest competitor, and we'll grow our business as a result. And they are flying, as you've probably seen if you've had some Tonys. So there you go. I wanted to throw that in there. But calls to action from our wonderful panel or invitations. Dharma, what would you like to invite these wonderful entrepreneurs to do?
I mean, we run the Tech for Good London community, which is now 10,000 members. But there's a whole network of amazing Tech for Good groups in Manchester, Bath, Bristol, you name it. We're all running virtual events. So check out all of the amazing Tech for Good networks and join, find people that you can connect with from all walks of life and work on your products.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dharma. Victoria?
I would say find your people and stick really closely to them, because it's a long journey that requires a lot of long nights and a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, but it's a lot easier, and the impact can be a lot greater if you are acting not alone, but as part of a system.
Fantastic. And join the Institute of Belonging and listen to what was the podcast? The Long Time Academy. The Long Time Academy. Fantastic. Chris?
Yeah, I would say, have a look at the RB impact assessment if you want to dive in and have a play around. Hopefully it's a useful tool. You don't need to be a B Corp. Not every business will be, but hopefully we've got some useful tools. So I encourage you to explore those. If you're in the UK, sign up for the Better Business Act and join our campaign to get every business on the purpose journey. And as Victoria says, there's ups and downs, isn't there? But the main thing is that we're all sort of in this together. So yes, it is all about people at the end of the day.
It is, and so many of you joined us from outside of the UK tonight. I'm conscious of that. So we've recommended lots of brilliant communities and projects and opportunities here in the UK. My approach is when I'm outside of a country is always to go, okay, does anyone know the equivalent of this in this region, in this country? Are there any shout outs for international projects or organizations in the better business and impact space that people can explore?
I think Sam might have mentioned it in the chat as well, but definitely Zebras Unite.
Yes.
They have over, I think, 4,000 chapters now, which is really amazing. So if you find yourself in Tokyo, if you find yourself in New Zealand, in any other place in the world, there must be a Zebra chapter.
Yeah, and Tech for Good Global as well, as you've just mentioned. Thank you. Any other international connections?
Just to say that B Corp is international. There will be a B Lab near you, hopefully, everywhere from US to Australia and New Zealand to West Africa, East Africa. So you should be able to track down a B Lab pretty near where you are.
Nice. Vic?
Creative mornings, just finding great people who would jump on whatever you're doing, test your products, help you find a co-founder, do all the things with you. Great network to be a part of, probably one in a city close by.
Yeah, or go to, exactly, Creative Mornings, go to a So Far Sounds gig when they're back, go to, what were those morning raves, Morning Gloryville, those are your people. Huge thanks, Dharma, Satyanathan, Victoria Stoyanova, Chris Turner, Holly Branson earlier. Thanks so much for giving your time. I know you're all out on your limits right now, so we really appreciate it. I hope you got some of the good energy back from this community. Thanks, team. Lovely to see you all. Good night.
Bye, everyone.